Several years ago, Barry, my boss, did a job for Big Daddy Construction and got screwed. It wasn't a huge amount of money, a couple of $1,000s, but screwed is screwed. Basically, he accepted Big Daddy's word on something that they denied later. Barry consulted his lawyer and was told that since the issue was not in writing, that any legal action was likely to fail, and even if he won, that the legal costs would exceed any settlement. And Big Daddy basically said, "My lawyer can beat up your lawyer." Barry then asked what every lawyer likes to hear, "What should I have done differently?" Fast forward to 2017. Big Daddy is soliciting bids for a new restaurant called Fancy Ass. Barry submits a bid for supplying and installing door hardware, things like doorknobs, emergency exit bars, door closers that pull the doors shut, and 3 automatic door operators ADOs. An ADO is something you have seen before. It has a metal plate with a wheelchair logo mounted on the wall. When you press it, a motor opens the door. It's designed to allow people with limited mobility to pass through a doorway. Barry wins the bid and calls a meeting. He is handling this job personally. All communication with Big Daddy is to go through Barry and only Barry. If someone from Big Daddy calls and says, "Nice weather, isn't it?" we are to reply, "I wouldn't know anything about that. Let me transfer you to Barry's line." Under no circumstances is anyone from Big Daddy to be given Barry's cell number. And the after-hours on-call texts are only to return the call and say that Barry will be in touch in the morning. Violation of any of this will be grounds for immediate dismissal for cause. Is this perfectly clear? A few weeks go by, and we get a call from GC, who not only is running the job for Big Daddy, but is Big Daddy's son. He's an entitled shitball of a tyrant, with anger issues and a vocabulary that relies heavily on profanity. I'm calling him GC because that's his job title, general contractor. For those who don't know, a GC is responsible for ensuring that everything gets done on a construction site in the correct order. For example, if you are building a bathroom, first you put up the wall studs, then the electrical is run, and the plumbing supply lines are roughed in. Next, the drywall goes up, then the tile, and the baseboards. The walls, ceiling, and trim get painted, then the cabinets, light fixtures, and switches are installed. Lastly, the plumbing fixtures go in. So you can see, a GC has to deal with several different subcontractors and coordinate their efforts. It's a stressful job, and you need the cooperation of the various people, and it's hard to get people to work with you if you're screaming swear words at them, something GC never figured out. This might be a good time to give you a visual of the restaurant layout. This is by no means to scale, just a sketch to give you an idea of what's going on. There are 3 ADOs to be installed, 2 on the entrance and 1 on the handicapped washroom. The conventional washrooms are down a set of stairs on the right, and by law, there has to be a washroom available for people using wheelchairs, marked as HC on the drawing. This is on a bit of a corridor of sorts used by the servers to bring food in and dishes out. The partitions separating the corridor are about shoulder high, separating the corridor from the seating area, which is what the circles with 4 chairs represent. These are tables, booths, etc., with a smattering of service stands for order entry, and bits and pieces like extra cutlery. The decor was fancy and meant to resemble a Victorian gentleman's club with oak throughout and thick carpets on the floors. Worthy of mention is the feature wall at the front, with alcoves for displaying sculptures and places to hang paintings. So GC calls us, and they are ready for the ADOs. We arrive and install. By the terms of the bid, it's Big Daddy's responsibility to supply dedicated 120 volts electricity for the ADOs, and to run the 12 volts wires from the activation plates to the top of the doorway so they can be connected to the circuit board for the ADO. This wasn't present at the time of the install, so he ran an extension cord to power the ADO, and used a wireless transmitter and receiver to trigger it. All of this was specified in the bid, which said that we could install, and then return to hook up the wires once they get run. Barry came and supervised the tech installing the ADOs personally. When GC signed off, buried in the description was a line or 2 referencing the relevant sections of the bid. When GC signed off on the handicap washroom install, there was a line noting that Big Daddy assumes all responsibility for compliance with the relevant building code section. GC didn't bother to read what he was signing, just scribbled a signature and took his copy. Barry made certain the tech was right beside him when GC signed off. Malicious compliance number 1. It's about 2 weeks before opening, and they are in the finishing stages. Barry gets a frantic call from GC that none of the ADOs are working, and they need these to be functional, or they won't get their occupancy permit. Barry heads down the next day with the tech. Barry, well, I found the problem. GC, so fix the fucking problem, Barry. There's no 120 volts run to the doors, and there's no 12 volts wires to hook up the buttons. GC, you didn't run the power. Why didn't you run the power? Barry, it's not in the scope of work in the bid. You're supposed to do it. GC, why didn't you tell me that when you were here the first time? Barry, I did, and you signed off on it. GC, where's the fucking electrician? Electrician, get your ass over here. Electrician. What's up? GC. Why isn't there any power for these door operators? Electrician. It's not part of my scope of work, Barry. There's some good news, GC. What? Barry. If we use wireless for the buttons, we won't need 12 volts wires. I'll have to bill you for it as an add-on, but once you get me 120 volts, these ADOs will be working. And now GC realizes how fucked he is. The interior of the restaurant is 90% complete, and there is no power to a critical part of the building. Without it, no permit. Big Daddy has fucked up big time, assuming that either Barry or the electrician would run the wires and not putting it into the scope of either bid. The electrical panel is in the back of the kitchen, and there's no way to bring 120 volts to the front entrance, except across the ceiling, which would be nearly impossible. All of the lighting and the ornate false ceiling was already in. Even if he was able to magically do that, he would either have to run a metal conduit down the surface of the feature wall, or rip out a good chunk of it, run the wires, and reinstall it. The handicap washroom ADO wasn't as much of a problem since it was closer and the wires could be run through the false ceiling. The section that contained the handicap washroom also had offices and storage with a T-bar ceiling, unlike the main room that had 20-foot ceilings. The electrician charged GC big dollars for the extra work. Malicious compliance number 2. Remember the handicap washroom? When the building inspector came to do a pre-check, they discovered that the square footage of the washroom, minus the area taken up by the in-swinging door, was less than the required minimum. They needed a quick fix as dismantling the washroom, moving a wall, and relocating the plumbing fixtures would be too expensive and would take too long. So GC decided to reverse the swing of the door and have it swing into the corridor rather than into the washroom. This had a really bad effect on the operation of Fancy Ass once it opened, as anytime someone wanted to use the washroom, the door blocked the flow of servers in and out of the kitchen. And people are lazy. Even able-bodied people were prone to using this washroom as it was closest. I don't know what the conversations between Fancy Ass and Big Daddy were like, but I imagine they were pretty intense. But who gives a fuck? GC signed off on that too. And Barry got to invoice for a whole new ADO, as the original was a pull style and reversing the swing meant that a push style was required. Pro revenge, GC called a few days after discovering that the entrance doors needed 120 volts, to tell Barry that the 120 volts was available. Barry heads down with the tech to check it out. In the vestibule was a heater known as an air curtain. It's a big heater, designed to push a high volume of warmed air into the vestibule, to mitigate cold outside air entering the restaurant. It pulls a significant amount of electricity every time it kicks on, and GC had tied the 120 volts for the entrance door ADOs into the same circuit. Barry explains that the bids specified that the ADOs require their own dedicated circuits, one for each. GC responds that he doesn't give a shit. Hook the goddamn things up, so Barry does, and has GC sign off again. Only this time buried in the sign-off sheet is an acknowledgement that by not providing dedicated circuits, all warranties are void, and subsequent service would be billable. Just like usual, GC scribbles his signature and takes his copy without reading it. These ADOs are finicky about power. There's a motor obviously controlled by a circuit board that determines how fast the door opens, how long it stays open, how fast it closes, how much force is used, that sort of thing. If it takes a spike in power, it fails, and the ADO no longer functions. A power spike blows a fuse and damages one of the components of the control board. This is replaceable, and the part is worth about $30. The control board can be fixed in about half an hour, with another half hour on a scope to make certain everything is good. Barry had sent one of the techs to the manufacturer to be certified in rebuilding the board, even though our standard was to just ship them back to the manufacturer and get a replacement. Sure enough, a couple of days later, GC calls in a panic. They have the final occupancy inspection scheduled for the next day, and one of the ADOs at the entrance is down. GC, your fucking ADO isn't working. Get down here and fix it. Barry, okay, but this isn't covered under warranty. It's billable. GC, what the fuck are you talking about? It's not even been a week and it's broken. It's warranty. Barry, no, warranties were all voided when you didn't provide clean power. GC, fuck that. Get down here and put in a new ADO. Barry, it doesn't need a new ADO. It needs a new control board. And I can get a new control board from the manufacturer in 4 to 6 weeks. GC loses his mind. There's no way he can delay the opening of Fancy Ass for 6 weeks waiting for a part. He calls Barry every name in the book, threatens legal action, etc. Barry responds, look GC, I have a control board on the shelf that was rebuilt by a factory certified technician. I can let you have it at 80% of the list price of a new one, and I can have it installed by noon tomorrow. Do you want the rebuilt or the new part? And do you agree that this is billable as per the terms of the bid? GC, yes. Just get the fucking thing fixed by tomorrow. Now Barry knows that GC and Big Daddy were going to fuck him just like they did years ago. That ended up being a, I never said that dispute. What GC didn't know is every time he called Barry, the call was recorded. You know that this call may be recorded for quality assurance purposes that you get when you dial in. Well, Barry never used his cell phone, never initiated a call, and every time GC called in, it was recorded and archived. Every single time. Sure enough, another couple of days go by and an ADO goes down again. Barry asks if GC is good with the rebuild, gets confirmation, removes the blown part, installs the rebuild, then takes the blown control board back to the shop and rebuilds it. A new control board is $750. The rebuild he's charging $600 for a part that maybe costs $75 to get back into shape. The bid specified that non-warranty service was $125/hour, minimum 4 hours, so tack on another $500 for labor, and it takes maybe 45 minutes to install a new control board and dial it in. So every control board replacement was generating $1,100. There were 27 blown control board swaps in the first 2 months. GC called in every one of them, and Barry got his verbal approval. If someone from Fancy S called in, we gave them GC's number and said that we could only come and fix it if GC was the one to call it in. Then Barry gets a call from Daddy of Big Daddy wanting to know what this invoice for almost 30 grand is for. Barry explains and a meeting is called. Barry brings his lawyer and all copies of the sign-off sheets, as well as transcripts of every conversation he had with GC. It becomes very apparent that GC fucked up large, and that Barry had every I dotted and every T crossed. Big Daddy is glaring daggers at GC, and basically tells Barry that if he wants to get paid, he's going to have to sue for the money. Barry smiles and slides his ace across the table. It's a contractor's lien against Big Daddy, Fancy S Restaurant, and Massive Realty Company, the owners of the building. Here's the thing. Fancy S was owned by internationally famous chef IFC, who makes his living getting very important people to invest in opening a new restaurant. This is a place where they go to be very important and bring their business contacts with them. After a short time, when the restaurant is the happening place in town, the investors sell the place and cash out large. IFC sticks around, helps with the transition, and makes a percentage of the restaurant's profits for the use of his name. He's built an income stream with the investors' money, and the investors make a nice return. Only now they can't sell with a lien on the place. And these investors have rabid fucking pit bulls as lawyers. Hell, some of them arrow lawyers. See you in court, Big Daddy. Only you're not facing Barry's lawyer, you're facing a whole new level of legal expertise. Have fun with that. Barry got his revenge and then withdrew service based on the disputed invoice. He's the only company allowed to service and install this brand of ADO as he has a protected territory from the manufacturer and does 7 figures worth of business with them a year. The only other companies anywhere nearby were warned off by the manufacturer, who even relayed the fact that Big Daddy had called them directly looking for service, and they referred Big Daddy to Barry. Barry will definitely get paid, as it's a standard to hold back 10% of the payment to a construction company for a year, and the holdback will definitely cover the invoice. So Fancy Ass will pay Barry and then take it out of Big Daddy's holdback. Either that, or they will sue Big Daddy into dust and force Big Daddy to cough up and settle the lien. Who knows what company Big Daddy picked up to cover the ADOs? Barry has friends in the industry and warned them all off, but they're asshole competitors, and Barry didn't say a thing to them. Maybe Big Daddy is screwing over one of the competition, and what hurts his competition helps Barry. What makes this deliciously pro? You think maybe, just maybe, Barry, who has decades of experience in the industry, might have had an electrician friend that could show him the electrical bid, and that maybe Barry knew from the beginning that there was no provision for 120 volts in either package, or that the washroom was too small, or that GC, a corner cutter, would take the easy way out and hook the ADOs into the air curtain. Way to go, Barry. Nicely played.